Um, okay, so once you pull it up on your computer, you have like access to your whole library of scans. There's a difference between the subscription and the free version with the exports, but it's not really going to matter for this workflow. I think with the free version, you can export GLTFs as the mesh, which is, it's a nice small file size, so I'd probably recommend that anyway. But if you have subscription version, you can export everything else as well. If anyone knows anything about file types, STL is going to be like no color data, just triangles. And you can do a lot more with OBJ, GLTF, and FBX. So we'll download this one. Does anyone want to follow along in Blender as we do like cleanup stuff? Okay. Can I put this scan in the drive? Nice.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I would love for my little guy to he's a little guy. I think my Christmas present is gonna be me 3D printed as a Christmas present.
Nice. I like that.
Present for you or present for you?
Other people.
You put like a life size.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like put it in someone's driveway at night.
Or we can make a cardboard cutout of it.
That would be. I'll give it to
I like
There
that.
you go.
Yeah, that's nice. We can leave it up in the amp lab. We can name a machine after it because it needs like a little person to name after. Yeah, cool.
you stick me to the end effector of the robot?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. So
Where's my sound?
yes, it is free, which is nice. No, it's a very small thing. Yeah, Blender is free and open source, and you can do a lot with it. You can like hard surface model. You can sculpt, like in ZBrush. You can render images from it. You can cut movies together in Blender. I think you can do audio editing. You can texture paint.
There's weird grasshopper.
Yeah, you can do weird grasshopper in Blender. You can do geometry nodes. Yeah.
I know a lot of people use it for animation.
Yeah. I think that's probably its main use is like movie, short film creation.
Or making donuts.
Or making donuts if you're the Blender guru. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So how's the downloads coming? If people want to follow along.
Oh yeah, I've got it on.
You got it? Did you download the file scan as well? Nice. Cool. Yeah, so
It's like,
yeah, it should be like middle mouse, right mouse, button click type thing. The way my Blender is working might be slightly different than the way yours will work, but there shouldn't be too many issues. Just because I'm using the like 2017 like movement commands, because that's just what I'm doing.
no mouth. Or eyes.
GLB file. Yeah.
It's not color.
It does have color, yeah. It should. It's not going to show up when you first import it though, so we'll get there. And the nice thing about Blender is it's Mac, Linux, Windows compatible, so that's cool. Yeah. Okay, so I'll do a quick overview of Blender, but yeah, moving the camera around is a middle mouse button thing, so it's nice to have a mouse for this. Middle mouse and shift, we can pan around, and then the middle mouse scrolling and zooming in and out, which should all be hopefully similar to Rhino that we're coming from. With importing, the special thing about Blender is you have to know the file type before you import, which is weird, but the import settings are still in file import, so we can find everything there, and then we just select GLTF, GLB, and then we can pull in the scan that we just did. which I believe is this one. Nice. Okay, so it should come in right in the middle of the scene, right at that origin point, where all the axes meet. We have a couple options for editing this file, just so we can clean it up a little bit. Maybe separate the legs, well, the arms are too close. We can separate the legs with just a little bit of cleanup as a model. Yeah, in Blender, we can move the object around with the tools on the left-hand side. So we have the transform tool, the rotate, and the scale, just like the gumball in Rhino. So we can select any of those and move the model around if we want to. Once you start working with Blender a lot, it's really easy to move, rotate, and scale just with hotkeys on the keyboard. If that's something you want to do, where G is for grabbing, and then R is for rotating, and then S is for scaling. And those are all uniform, so that's nice. But the scale isn't going to matter too much for this. Okay, so there are colors with this object, GLB. And if we look at the top of the screen, there's a few important things to look at for most things you'll do in Blender. On the top left-hand side, there's a drop-down for object mode. That's the mode we're currently in. We have two other main options, edit mode and sculpt mode. If you put on edit mode, we'll get all the vertices that make up this scan, so all the points of every single triangle that makes up the scan. And we could pick one of those vertices and use the same move, rotate, scale controls to move around specific vertices if we really wanted to. But to do cleanup, moving around every single vertex takes a while. So the second mode is sculpting mode, and the toolbar on the left-hand side will update yet again, and now we have a different set of tools. All of these, if you've ever sculpted with clay before, is very, very similar. We have tools such as like a snake hook or a knife or a sponge type thing. So we can do like different operations to this. We'll think of it as like a ball of clay. All those tools are on the left-hand side, so you can scroll through and see all the different ones. The main ones to look at, though, would probably be the grab tool, where we can go and affect a large portion of the mesh at once, which is a lot better than the vertex selection and move. And we can also change the size of influence of any of these sculpting brushes right at the top here. So we can see we can change the radius, and then I can pull like a lot more around. A little wavy guy. Yeah.
Me for real.
I don't think George Washington is English.
Yeah?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'll put that on eBay.
I'll take it. We have the same birthday.
What? That's crazy. What?
Okay, so that's the grab tool. I like that one a lot. It's really easy to just move around. The other nice one is the smoothing tool, where if you have like really rough patches of geometry, you can come in and smooth it down. So, okay, what happened currently, which is kind of cool, it's like a little Voronoi subtraction thing. Nice, nice. But this brings up the next point, where the most important thing we'll want to do before using this for anything else is make this one continuous mesh. So if you remember like welding and things from previous, I think when we did the necklace, we looked at welding for putting like mesh pieces together. The same issue is happening here. So in edit mode, we can see all the vertices, and they look like they're together for the most part, but on like a cellular level, I don't know. If you zoom in a lot, they're not together. But it's impossible to see with your eye that they're not connected. One way to check is if I come into edit mode and click on one of the vertices, it'll light up orange. And then I can I know the hotkey. Okay, okay, whatever. If you do Control L on one of the vertices, we'll get only the patch that is connected to those vertices. So we can see that this patch is its own separate thing from any patch next to it. So Control L will do all of the linked vertices. So we can see that it's not together, and that's why when I did that smoothing brush, it was breaking everything apart. So the first thing to do to join everything together is to weld it. In Blender, we'll use a command called merge, which is close enough. But one way to select all of the points at once is you can just hit A on the keyboard, and you'll get everything selected. So that's really easy. You could also zoom out and do a box selection. The box would be with the B hotkey, and that'll give you a box. You can also come to select and select a different selection type up here, or you could hit A and it'll just select everything at once.
Wait,
Yeah.
do you know, I imported my file, but
Mhm.
I know the man's in here, but it also has a huge box around it.
Yes, that is a good point. So by default, when you open up a new Blender scene, it's going to give you a cube, a camera, and a light. You can hit A to select everything in the scene and then just delete everything when you come in. It'll also delete the man or whatever we want to refer to it as. You know,
Little guy.
it'll delete little guy. So you'll have to import him again.
Okay.
But yeah. But it's a good point I forgot to mention. When you open up a new Blender scene, I always just, the joke is with Blender, you hit A and then hit delete as soon as you open a new scene. Yeah. So I guess off that, we also have a layer panel on the right side, just like Rhino has a layer panel as well, or a collection panel. And we can see our one mesh object up at the top. You can do organization if you want to, and we can also rename things, which is fun. So I can double click, just like you would for a file, to rename this mesh to little guy. So now, like, we know in the scene that's what it is. So that's nice to have. Okay. Okay, so to actually merge all the vertices together with everything selected, under mesh, we want to do an operation to the mesh. We have this merge option, and we can merge by distance. So right now, all those patches, the vertices were overlapping, so they have a distance of 0 in between. So if we want to just quickly weld everything, we can merge everything by a distance. And we can see the distance is very small, which is fine. This will weld all of our points together. So you shouldn't have to update any settings, just merge.
Wait, sorry, you selected them and then.
Yep, so A to select everything, and then mesh up the top. And then there's an option for merge, and then we can just merge by distance. Yeah. I'm assuming it worked.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we have no way of telling until we do the next thing. So once you've hit the merge button, we can come back and just make sure we did the right thing. So I can select a single vertice, hit Control L, and now everything should light up because it is now all welded together. So now we have a watertight mesh, which is good. A few other things we could look at if you wanted this as a really nice model is we could get rid of these vertices between the feet. So I'll show that quick. There's a nice plugin that already comes with Blender that we can use to fix this. So one way to remove vertices is first we'll have to select the ones we want to remove, and then we can delete them. There's a couple of ways with the selection menu. The first one that I used a minute ago was box select, a very basic rectangular selection. We also have the circle select or the lasso select, so you could do either of those. But circle is quite nice because it basically gives you a brush that you can just come over and like brush on which vertices you want to select. Whereas the box selection, you get one selection and then that's it. So one thing too with selecting vertices, I could select these and then rotate around with the middle mouse wheel to the back and then select the rest of them. Or something I could do is use a different viewport setting. So right now we're in shaded view, just like you would be in Rhino when you can see the faces. But we can also go to wireframe view and see it more transparent. So the next thing to look at is on the top right-hand side of this main editing window. We have 4 options with these circles. Right now we're in shaded, but we also have wireframe to the left, and we have the viewport or the texture shading, and then the rendered view both to the right of shaded. So for any of you that were asking about the colors, you could turn on either the texture or the rendered view, and you would see color. that came in with this mesh, but in shaded, we're not going to see any color on the mesh. And you can look at that later, but for right now, we're going to flip it into wireframe mode, and then I can see through the entire object. So a second ago when I was doing the box selection or the circle selection, it was only selecting the points that I could see, but now that I can see through the object, I can come back and do it again, and it'll select all the vertices on the back side as well. So now I don't have to move the camera. I can just select straight through everything and grab them all at once. And then if anyone's using the circle selection, if you are confused of how to stop using circle selection, you can just hit right click and it'll turn off the circle, or else you're kind of stuck in the circle forever, which is weird. So how's the selections coming? People doing them? Okay, I'll give you some.
You delete with sculpt,
Like punch holes or something in it?
just like, could I like do this? Get rid of
You maybe could. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm coming from, if anyone knows ZBrush, I'm coming from ZBrush, trying to think of what you can do in Blender. You might be able to. Is that what you're trying to do? Trying to do something different than what I'm doing? Okay. There is, so in sculpting, you can't like break mesh or vertices apart. It's going to just move the vertices you already have. But there is a setting called Dynamesh in Blender, which I think if you're in sculpting is going to be in the top right. It's a little checkbox for, I think it's called Dynamesh. And if you select that when you sculpt, if you want to sculpt in higher detail, you can turn on Dynamesh, and then when you sculpt, it'll add more polygons to where you're sculpting, like, and it'll change the overall topology of your piece, which is nice to use. So with that, it might punch holes, but I'm not sure. But this is going to be the easiest way to do it. Just with edit mode, we can select the vertices, and then I believe you can hit delete. You can also hit X for Blender, and then X will bring up a context menu, and then we can see what we want to delete. And the easiest thing is to just delete vertices, and then I'll delete vertices, faces, and lines. So I'll do that now.
Does it patch it too?
It does not. Yeah. So that's the next thing to look at. Okay, so once I deleted those vertices, I'm going to go back into shaded, and then we can now see that there is a hole in little guy's feet, which for the cases today would be fine. We can bring this into any other 3D software and it would work. But if you ever do something like this and you're like, I want to now 3D print this, it's not going to work well because there is no volume to print. It's just an open surface. So with Blender, as I said earlier, there's a plugin that comes with it that will easily close up these holes for you. So I'll touch on that real quick. Under Edit, we have a button for Preferences. And in Preferences, we can pull up the add-ons section. And then this is where like all of the plugins will be. There's a lot that come with Blender that just aren't turned on.
I love sculpt.
I do. And this is a great one. There's one called the 3D Print Toolbox. So if you start typing in 3D-print, 3D-print will bring up the 3D Print Toolbox, and you can just check that on, and then it'll become active in Blender.
You just exit out of that.
Yep, yeah, you don't have to save settings in the most updated versions of Blender. So once you've turned that on, if you hit N on the keyboard, it'll pull up this little menu on the right-hand side. And by default, we'll see some transform settings if you really wanted to move it by numbers. But this will also be where some of our plugins are located. So on the right-hand side, you probably have item, tool, and view. But now you should also see the 3D print option. And then this has some really nice buttons in here to just close off any open holes. And and you can also check for printability and things like that. If we really wanted to check, we could hit check all, and then it'll show us at the bottom, like how many open faces or something we have.
Sorry, what was the add-on?
It was 3D print dash or 3D dash print, and then it should come up. Nice. Yeah, so we can see just based on this very simple check, we can see pretty much the issues that we caused a second ago, which makes sense. But now that we know that, we can also hit this make manifold button in the cleanup dropdown, and this will close off the holes that we created. So now we have a little patch right over there. So, and you can hit N to push that panel away again. Yeah, so at this point it's pretty nice. We could use this a lot better. The feet are separate. If you really wanted to come back and clean up, we could go back into sculpting mode and like use our smooth brush to just smooth off that patch, because it's probably going to be quite jagged. So just really quickly, and this, you don't have to do this as long as the holes are closed. That's pretty nice. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I was selecting some things with it. It's pretty fun. But we're gonna use the controllers for today because you can't do much with your hands. Okay, so now if you have a VR headset, which they have a couple up in the library just up the stairs if you want to rent them out, and I think I've installed Gravity Sketch on both of them, so this should work. But now we can talk about exporting from Blender and then going into the VR headset. So all of the next step is going to happen over the cloud. So I'll upload it to a service that the headset can connect to, and then we can pull it from there. Question.
How do I make it so it's not so dark?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
You go
Yeah.
into the options, there's different scenes, like shading, viewport shading. I like the one with the actual ones on it.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool, cool. So yeah, I'm going to talk about exporting. It's the same as importing, but backwards. We can export as, I don't know, like this makes sense, right? We export as anything. I'm just gonna export as an STL. I don't know, easy enough. There you go. No, that's bad. Okay, little guy. And then one important thing here in Rhino, when you're exporting, usually what I tell people is to do file export selected, and then it'll just export the one thing you're working on. In Blender, though, there is not an export selected button at first. So when you go to export, pick the file type, we can turn on selection only, and then that'll also export only the one thing we had selected in the scene, which is nice. So we'll do that. So coming back to Polycam, for Gravity Sketch, there is a service called Landing Pad, which this is their cloud service where you can upload models to and save models from the headset onto. So you can transfer work between your computer and your headset. So we can upload the file here and put that in. Little guy. And then it's on the headset, so that's pretty easy. You will have to make like an account for Gravity Sketch if you get it, so you can access stuff here, but that makes sense. So now we'll come into the headset and take a look at this. So this should pop up in a second.
I don't know if you could put on a VR headset and do like this for it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty fun. That's beeping.
Sorry.
Oh.
Titans slip up.
Nice, nice. I thought it was me. I was like, I hope not. Yeah, it's working. Cool.
My bad.
No, it's just every time I go into the headset and then I just start hearing different noises from the class, and I'm like, okay.
What are they doing?
So let me know if anything happens to the screen because we're casting over Wi-Fi, which is never the most stable, but it should work. Okay, so in Gravity Sketch, I have my controllers here in front of me, which are fun. This is really nice because you're in like a 3D scene versus stuck in the 2D computer with the mouse. I feel like this is very intuitive and you can get a lot of work done really quickly this way. But to start, we'll create a new sketch just like any file. We'll create a new thing. Right now I'm in a white scene with a grid on the floor. I believe you can see that.
Yeah.
But in VR, I can take off my headset.
No.
And now it's black and now I can see you. So,
What?
yeah.
How many fingers am I holding up?
4, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's actually
But-
hot.
But you can't see that up here, which is sad because it's kind of cool.
Just the pass-through mode, like the black and white.
Yeah, it's just like the infrared mode.
Wow.
So like,
The new one is full color.
Yeah. yeah, I need to get the new one. The new one comes out in like 7 days or something.
Yeah.
So I need to get it. But it's funny, if I look at my phone, I can see my Face ID sensor.
That's the
Lighting up.
That's crazy.
Well, you can't see, but yeah, it's like the infrared camera. So there's 4 cameras around the points that track. I think there's like 12. You know how many infrared? In that?
In the ring itself,
Yeah.
they're between the early ones at 12 and the new ones at 16 actually.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're mostly up here in the ring, and I think there's a couple on the hand, like where the button is as well to track. Which is nice because a lot of old VR headsets, you need to put up like light towers in the corners of the room to do all the tracking, but this one is tracking on board. Which is cool, but it's not perfect, so you do need like good lighting mostly.
It's being outside.
That too, yeah, it needs like very
Yeah,
consistent.
you have, cause of,
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess just cause the sun is so bright. And it's like a point source, it mugs it up. I don't know why.
Yeah, it can be a little finicky, but usually it's pretty good. Okay, so in Gravity Sketch, let me delete this. We can control most of the settings from the left hand. So we have this blue context menu, like hamburger menu thing. In here, we have all the settings we would need. So like saving, settings, we can change the world as well. But the one thing that matters today is going to be the prefab. So this is going to be where our 3D models are. So the one I just uploaded to Landing Pad, we can find that here from my workspace. So we can pull in little guy. Yep. Yep, that's right. So here, moving around, if you could imagine, is slightly different in the headset than it is in a computer. So if you want to move the camera, you move your head, and that works. Moving objects, we have the right hand has the, and you can switch this if you are left-handed, I believe. But we have the selection tool over here. We can see by the circle that gets bigger and smaller. And we can, you can change it to a cube too, but I'm gonna keep it the sphere. We can use this to hover over things and select. So you can make the sphere bigger or smaller with the thumbstick on the right hand. So we can grow or shrink that. And then as we hover over, it'll light up the model. So that's one way to select things. If you want to actually make the model bigger, we can hover over and pressing the grip trigger. So kind of where my middle and ring finger are is where the grip trigger is. So we can hover over, grab it, and then move it around the scene. But now it's still quite small. If we want to scale it, we can come over, grab it with the right hand, and then also with the grip trigger on the left hand, we can scale it up or down. So we can make it really big if we want. Yeah, so that's how you move one thing. If say we have multiple things in the world
Oh.
and we want to move them all at the same time, we can kind of do the opposite. So we start with the left grip trigger and we can click that and then the world will move. And then if we come in with the right hand and grip that, then we can scale the whole world. So that's like world versus model selection. Okay, what I just did is delete something. So we also see on the right hand, we have this red button. If you hover over and grab something, you can delete it out of existence. And that works while you're grabbing, but it also works as the undo button. So now that I'm not grabbing anything, I can press it again and that'll undo my previous steps. So that's like Control Z, Control Y type thing. Going off that, on the left hand, we also have this little clock. And this kind of reverses time or moves time forward. So kind of seeing all of your undo steps at once, you have access to that there. So that's kind of the main moving, grabbing, undoing sort of things. There's a couple other buttons on my hands though. The first one to look at is going to be this purple one, and this is all of our tools. So we have curves, surfaces, and then like primitive shapes as you would see in most software, and then text. So I'll touch on a few things here, and if anyone has questions, feel free to speak up because I can't see. But we'll start with custom ink. So with this one selected, there's a whole menu here for different ways to change it, but I'm not going to touch on that too much today. Once you have the tool selected, you can close the menu by pressing the purple button again. And then now in my right hand, on top, I have this little sphere here. And that's going to be my pen to start drawing with. In the very similar way to how I can scale my selection influence, I can also, same with the thumb wheel, just going left and right, I can scale the pen. So if I have the pen and I'm going to call this like left click, but clicking with my pointer finger on the button up top, we can hold that down and start drawing a pen shape. And this you can get very complex very quickly with something that would take a very long time to do in Rhino if you wanted a curve like this. So that's like selecting a tool and drawing. And I'll show with the rest as well other things we can draw. But going off this curve, I can grab it and I can move it around. I can scale it up and down just like before. But a new thing with the parts you can make in Gravity Sketch is when I'm grabbing it and holding it, I can with my left hand press this blue button, and this will open up kind of like edit mode as we just saw in Blender, but here we can see all the control points of the curve that we just made. So with the right hand, we were using this to move objects around, but we can also use this to move these control points around. So we could come back in and edit our curve after drawing and get something a little bit different. That's editing control points, but we can also edit scale with these as well. So if I was to select one line, and just like when I selected the curve itself and then came into edit mode, I can, with the thumbstick on the right hand side, I can make this curve larger or smaller at this area. So it's pretty easy if you want to make a change. It's usually all on one hand, which is nice. Another thing too, and I'll touch on this menu a little bit, but we have some settings with the curve here. It doesn't just have to be like a circular sweep around this curve. We can also make it more just like a surface, so very flat. And if we come in now, we can see that instead of being circular, it's more of a flat shape. So there's one more thing I'll touch on with like editing control points, is actually going to be editing the normal like of this curve. So right now these are intersecting, but if I want them not to, in my right hand, I can move the thumbstick to change what like mode I'm in. So I can go from control points to normal. And with this one, I can change the way the surface is pointing if I want them to kind of stay apart and maybe smooth out the topology of this curve. So that's nice. We have a few other things in here, but mainly control points and normals. And we'll get into more with some of the more solid shapes. So that is the pen tool. And with that pen tool, you saw we got a fall off at the end. With some of these other ones, we will get, put this back. We won't get any fall off, so just a slightly different pen tool. But again, you can come in just the same as we did with the last one and change the scale at each of the control points there. There's a few different ways to draw curves as well if you really wanted to, but I'm not going to take a look too much at that. The rest are just different ways to draw curves. Volume is kind of interesting because we can draw like 3D shapes just by moving the pointer around, and then we have like a rock or something. So that's cool. Yeah. This one is a little weird when we come into edit mode because there's like points inside. So not my favorite way to make solid objects, but I'll get to that in a second.
I said you were inside the rock.
Yeah. If you want to, you can just like look inside.
Hey.
Yeah. I should have asked first. I'm sorry.
Don't look at that.
too good. Okay, so in surfaces, same way with the curve, we can also draw surfaces. The first one I'll look at is the quilt. So with this one, once I select it, I can hold down with my right trigger and it'll bring up kind of a ghosted image of that. And then with this one, I have to click with the left hand to actually set different points in space. And then we can get complex surfaces very fast. So I don't know, you make a bench out of that or something. It's kinda cool. And then same with the pen tool, you can come back and if you want to edit these points, we can come and flatten it out. Because I was working with a single profile drawing this shape, but now we can come back and change that profile at certain positions to make it more like how we would want it. And we can make the selection bigger or smaller to affect more of the model. So that's nice. One thing I'll point out now that we're at surfaces is we don't just have control points and normals. You can see this menu in my right hand. Right now, everything is blue, so I can select faces, lines, or points. But I can toggle between them all just by moving the thumbstick. So now I only have points, I only have lines, and now I only have faces. So you can toggle between that if that's a way you want to work. We can also look at edge loops in here, which if you know a little bit about box modeling, edge loops are basically the different cuts that make up this whole thing. So when I was drawing it, every time I clicked down, I made a new edge loop to add more to the surface. So with that turned on, say I want this whole piece, I could just select all those at once. Instead of with it turned off, I can only select one curve at a time. So edge loops are nice. They can be your friend. So that is the surface. We can move on. The rest are pretty similar. I can talk about this round one. So let's see, if you want to do like throwing pottery in Gravity Sketch, we can go make radial type of shapes in here pretty quick. So that's fun. That is locked around this center line though, which is in Gravity Sketch. Let me come out of this tool. And then if we come back again, we can edit the points, but now we have radial symmetry. So there's a little bit more control over the symmetry of this shape, which is fun. So that's cool. What does it look like?
Oh,
Uh-huh. No, I lost it. There it is. Okay. Put it over. Okay, so the last one, the way I like to usually work is with these primitive shapes and in a mode called subdivision object. So I'll show you what that means. I'm going to start with a cube, but you could start with any shape. The cube is just the easiest primitive. But I'm going to turn cube on. And now if I press down with my right, I'll get one corner of the box and then the left will control the other corner. And just like with the surface, if I set with the left, or never mind, okay. I can do the shape and I let go and it sets a box. So now I have a basic box in the scene, but what can I do with it? So if I come into the edit mode again with the blue button, just like the surface, I can come grab points, lines, or faces, and we can move those around to change the box. But we can also do more to this box than just have it as a six-sided shape. If I grab one of these surfaces and pull it away, while holding onto it, I can click down with my pointer finger on the trigger, and that'll set the surface back to where it was before, and it'll give me a new plane. So I can use that in conjunction with itself a lot of times to start making more complex shapes. And I can come back to any face and add more off that. So now we're getting more of a complex shape with very easy processes just with box. But this is cool. But it could look a lot better. It could be less faceted, more high detail. And one thing you can do is if you grab the shape in edit mode, we have this menu just like with everything else, and we can turn on the subdivision. So when we do that, it gets a lot smoother. And we can up this level more to get a much smoother shape. So this is nice because we can get a very high detailed object, but it's very easy to come back and edit because we have very few control points. And anytime I move a control point, it's going to update that smoothness of the whole shape, which is nice. And there's a lot we can do with this. So I'm going to get into actually modeling around the form now. So I'll move this over here. Before we start modeling on the form, one thing I can do is I can grab it and change the color. So what color should we be?
What?
Well, I'm asking the person.
My whole body?
Yeah,
Green.
green. How about that?
Darker.
Okay, how about that? Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have a green little guy. This will just make it a little.
I'm an army man.
You give him like a platform.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah.
have.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so before I start modeling, it's gonna be real annoying to model the right side and then have to model the left side. So we can fix that before we start. In the settings, we have a mirror guide here, so we can turn on mirroring. And then you'll see the mirror come up. So our little guy is not in the center, so we'll have to do that first. So I'll move him over. That's about lined up. And now if we use the same box tool from before, now I get two boxes. Hey. So I'll drop that in. And we'll grab a different color for this one so we can see some differences. And with this box, I can come now into edit mode and start making a thing. So any suggestions of what we could make?
Armor.
Funky hat.
Funky armored hat.
I'm
Well, we need one
armored
idea.
vest.
Okay, a funky armored vest that turns into a hat. I like it. Okay, so I'll pull in edit mode here, and as these two shapes are separate, if we get them close to the center line, they'll snap together. So now they're connected in symmetry, which is nice. So I'm gonna start making with the vest, so I can come in and move these surfaces down with subdivisions on to get something really, really smooth. So this is why I think it's very easy to pick up, is because everything is kind of just hand motions. So if you can figure out how you would move the object in real life to get it to be that shape, it'll be very, very similar in VR to do the same thing. So I'm gonna wrap this around so we get a full shape, and then some new tools in Gravity Sketch we have this hammer and paintbrush here. I can pull that up and see some other tools that I can move through. I'll get to them in a second, but the first one is selection. I can use this to do like a, where is it? Like a shift select in Rhino, where we can select multiple different things at once. And then just like as I was showing before, we can come in and grab that, and then pressing down with our pointer finger, we can create more of that shape. So I'll do that again, and we'll get more of a vest going up this time.
What if we didn't want it all to be smooth? If you wanted it to have some corners.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. That'll be fun. Okay, so here's your funky little vest. I like it. So right now, I'm gonna go back to my original tool to keep looking at this, and we'll turn on everything again. I like that. That's cool.
I saw an army of people looking like this. I'd be scared.
Yeah.
I think, no.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. Okay, so that's that step. I'm gonna go into
That's the whole point.
I'm gonna go into the hat now, and we'll explore
Andy,
another tool.
you sit on the bus with this? No one's.
That's a good point. It could be a interesting like fashion, like grant piece. Yeah, some social commentary.
That we really love.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so going into the hat, I'll show another important thing about box modeling is I can go duplicate this face again, and I can scale it down like while I'm pulling it. So I can do like everything in one motion. So I can get it like closer into the head, and we'll just keep going up to be some kind of hat. So that's a start. We didn't get that perfectly symmetrical, but like that's enough. And then I'm gonna do the same thing back here. And come in from both sides. Let's see. And now say we want these two to meet. We can pull some surfaces together, but they're not gonna click into each other, even though the vertices are on top of each other. So one thing we can do to combine like two separate parts of this gravity sketch subdivision model is I can come in with my selection tool, find both faces. And with the faces grabbed, I can just delete both of them. And now we have like an open surface. So now that it's open, we can go put these points and they'll snap together. And this is how we can get one continuous topology for a surface. So now both sides are connected as one. So we can keep doing that with the tools that I talked about a minute ago.
Yeah.
What?
I just said, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have a simple little hat. One thing we can do to start adding more detail into this object is, and actually I'm going to turn off symmetry to get that out of my face, but symmetry will still be on the object. We can come in and we can start adding loop cuts. So as I was showing with the surface, we had that that loop that I could grab as one. We can add those in now. So say I want another line going around here to make more detail in this area. I can come with my pointer finger and just click there to add a loop going all the way around with more control points. So I can do that, and we can add in a little Teletubby shape. So I split the symmetry there to start pulling this apart. And as you saw, I can select one of these lock things and just unlock it with that button and split it. And then we can come back and I can duplicate this line and just to close off those. So now we have a branch coming around. So I can go with that and then just connect these back together. That's pretty cool.
Thank God.
Yeah. That's true. And this is all showing very important skills of gravity sketch. But yeah, no, I could come in with like a little type thing. I don't know. Nice. Yeah.
Wow.
Literally, it's just bizarre.
I think my mom would be very confused.
And then one more thing back to your question with still adding more detail is that's adding an entire loop. And if we do that, it'll add a loop around the entire thing, which maybe that's not exactly what we want. Maybe I just want some more detail on this one face. I can come up with my knife tool, or okay, edge cut, it's less fun. And I can go and actually cut in more lines. And now we have like a face within this bigger face. So I can come back and cut even more and get like a smaller box in here. So now I can extrude from just this section, give you some pockets or something. I don't know.
Do you make holes?
Yeah. That's a good
Maybe
point.
for my arm.
No.
Yeah, we could. Okay, so with this, we have a smaller, we've got a smaller face in this larger face. One thing you'll notice though is the topology isn't perfect around here. That's just because when you're working with box modeling techniques, it's best to have every face defined by 4 points. And these two boxes are defined by 6 points. So it's not perfect. When you do edge loops, it will be perfect, but I mean, you can do this how you will, but just to note. But yeah, I can go pull like all this down, and then I can take this surface and I'll grab it, duplicate it in and scale it down. And we'll just have to match it up. Same thing we did up there. I'll have to match it up with this internal face. So one thing I'll touch on first is we also have these layers over here, and I can grab this menu and drop it in the scene. So it's like always to my right, which is cool. I can add a new layer, and maybe I'll put little guy on layer 2 so we can just turn him off for a second. Sorry. And then, okay, I've pushed that part in. We have to come back and connect it to the other face inside. So I can do the same thing. I can grab this, duplicate it, and scale it down. And if I delete this face and then delete that face, we have the starting of a hole, and then we can come back and put these vertices together to get the topology to be quite nice and smooth again. But now we can come back and turn them on, and then we can move these points around like that a little bit. The arms aren't perfect, but you could get to a little hole for the arm there. And the topology is getting a little bit all over the place. You can always turn it off if you want and come back and see what the issues are with topology. Smooth it out a little bit. And just turn that back on when you need to. But yeah, basics there. One other thing we can do is say we don't like how smooth one of these surfaces are. Maybe like this part going up and around. We can grab this tool to the right called the crease, and we can select certain lines, and they'll turn up blue. And then this will give us a crease in the final model, so we can see it's not smooth anymore just at that section. So that's one way to add in slight bit more detail with the crease tool. One other way is we could also just add a lot more loop cuts. And now that I have so many close to each other, if I want to make a sharp edge here, maybe I don't want it to be like mathematically perfectly sharp like the crease tool. I can just add more points around that original line. And now I can like make my own crease that I can edit how creasy it is or something. So that's the other way to like add more detail and a little bit more of a controllable way. So yeah.
I think this guy should be 3D printed.
Yeah,
I really do.
we can do it. Well, yeah, we'll make one.
That's the first
We
thing I'm
should get them
doing.
a really big shoe.
Wow.
They're like, yeah.
Make some big shoes real quick.
I have a sword.
Oh, yeah.
Just the rest of the class.
I'm 100% down for this.
Or balloon sword. Thank God.
I think that's a fitting sword,
Yeah.
especially for the outfit.
Sword and cloud shoes.
This is like those street performers where like they paint really quickly. You don't know how they do it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just never. I like my claw.
Yes.
Oh,
It's kind of tough.
I was just saying.
What did we create?
That's a character.
A true masterpiece.
Okay, so to set this masterpiece in stone, we have a couple options just to finish off here. One thing, if you've noticed, I've been like checking the time with this hand, which is cool. So it's not like a casino. I have the time here. On the other side, I have a camera, so I can take screenshots. So I can just move the piece, come up here. We can change the like field of view like millimeter as well. So if we want like a 69 millimeter camera.
It says 16 by 9.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the film
Got
size.
it.
16 by 9. Yeah, I can change. I can probably change that as well. I don't know, but like, yeah, we can come in and just hit the button, and then like whatever that camera is, it'll pop out and then save.
Polaroid.
Yeah, Polaroid. I was like, whatever Kay has, that Polaroid camera. Yeah. So we can just like take a bunch of screenshots of this thing. It's a great way to take it.
Oh my God.
Okay, if you took a whole bunch of screenshots of this and all of these, could you then upload them to Polycam and have it?
Yeah, that'd be quite a way to work 3D, but you could. You
Never
could.
ending workflow.
Yeah, because Polycam's cool. Like there are like services where you don't need the accelerometer data and you can just give it photos and it'll figure out how to stitch them together. So you could. So it doesn't have to be like a perfect spin. But yeah, this is fun. The other way to save it is we can come back to the save settings. We probably should have been saving this document the entire time, but I digress. We have an export button over here, so we can export this. We have a couple options. OBJ FBX will export meshes. IGES will export curves. So like if you want to pull the curves from the sword into Rhino and then do your own pipe to it or like move the control points in Rhino, you want IGES. But I'm gonna go for OBJ. We'll go for FBX. So we'll have the color data. They're both kind of the same thing, but FBX like has it all in one file, which is cool. We can set the scale here, although that doesn't really matter too much, and then we can just hit export. This will connect back to the internet again, so we can save, and then yeah, Save it, and then I'll upload. Cool. We got them. So now we can hop back to landing pad.
The Amazon have a multicolored printer.
And we have 2 color printers. That's about it. So if we got like a Bamboo Lab, we could do like more than that, but that is yet to be seen. Okay, and then we can take little guy, I can download him. I can throw him back in Blender. So now I'll be importing as FBX. Nice. So the FBX also has like relationship lines and things, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like a sword.
That's where you put your hand.
Just explore it.
Yeah, I can.
No,
Yeah, it looks exactly like a sword too.
No, it crashed. We lost him, but you know, you could do it there. So I'll put little guy back in here. So y'all can have it. Yeah.
Feel free to do whatever you want.
Nope. 1 minute overtime. That's pretty good. But yeah.
link Discord just crashed.
Okay,
Yeah.
Was that 3D viewer?
that was a fun class. We should do this all the time.
How think this will
That
finish
should
right
be
now?
our final project. Can we